if we just take a really long time on this case, they're not going to cut funding, and then we're not going to have people in our state without SNAP or without, Medicaid. So we're protecting our constituents by giving them what they want and not prosecuting them.
Hey, welcome to the third hour of our program. One of my favorite newsletters over on Substack, one of my favorite newsletters anywhere, is called The Existentialist Republic. It's written by Christopher Armitage. The actual URL is cmarmitage.substack.com, or you could go over to substack.com and plug in Existentialist Republic or Christopher Armitage. And Christopher handles some really serious topics in really serious ways. And I'm very pleased to have him back with us today. Christopher, welcome back to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure having you with us. A journalist, criminal justice researcher, former law enforcement officer, veteran, author. I want to start with the piece that you wrote today, actually. Hundreds of people have filed local police reports against Doge. This is, you're kind of reporting back on response to a suggestion that you had made in a previous newsletter. Tell us about it.
So, looking at the blatantly criminal conduct of Doge, it's been pointed out in so many different ways. The states, so what's interesting is when I dug into that for the original article, I saw that for digital crimes, they are largely determined by the jurisdiction of the victim. So that means that the county prosecutor and the state attorney general, these are the people, the local police department is where people could go to file a police report, the same as if somebody stole your social security number in another way and possibly sold it to hostile foreign actors. And so, with that as the starting point, me and some folks with the Existentialist Republic team, including some amazing attorneys who helped put together their time, we made 50 different letters. Sorry, actually 200 letters for all 50 different states, and we wrote an article explaining it for the layperson, and we released that article, and it got some good traction, and hundreds of people, if not over 1,000, reached out to their state attorney general, to their governor, to their county prosecutor, and to their local police department to file police reports, make criminal referrals, have back and forth on emails. Many of them sent that information back to us. The majority received no response from anybody, especially county prosecutors. But what we were able to show in that first article was you have standing. That is, you have a right. You have been harmed. You are a victim by the letter of the law of what happened, and that this is not a federal issue, even though it happened in D.C. and it was involved with the federal government, that this is to be, in the past, things like this would involve deferral to authority because you could count on the federal government to handle its own business. But that era has ended. And so that deferral is not written and codified. In fact, the opposite is codified. From the founding of our country, we have had this dual sovereignty doctrine, this idea that states have their own authority and residents have their own ability to be protected from the federal government or the state government. We have these separate sets of criminal laws, and they're kept separate so that one group can't, overpower the other. Right.
Right, the proverbial balance of powers, among other things. I'm curious. In my article today over at Hartmann Report, I was writing about Title 18, Section 592, this law that's. My question to you is going to be, how could this be enforced? It's a law that's 2 paragraphs long. This is the first. The second paragraph is about implementation. The first paragraph says. And by the way, this is in the context of ICE at the polling places, okay? Whoever being an officer of the Army or Navy or any other person in the civil, military, or naval service of the United States orders, brings, keeps, or has under his authority or control any troops or armed men at any place where a general or special election is held, unless such force is necessary to repel armed enemies of the United States, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 5 years or both, and shall be disqualified from holding any office of honor, profit, or trust under the United States. It seems to me that putting ICE at the polling places is a felony, and that anybody who orders it can lose their office. Are you familiar with this? And whether you are or not, how, given that this is part of the United States Code, how is there any way that you could reach out to local officials and ask them to enforce this, or does this require going through the Department of Justice?
Well, one thing I'll say is this should be an and situation, not a but situation. We should address that in addition to other strategies at the state and local level to protect our elections. As far as that one, I think what would be the best approach, just on the conversations we've had in the existentialist republic activist community and Discord and that kind of thing, is that it would be helpful to have states and cities send their local law enforcement officers out with a very friendly posture and just ask for identification from these people. And then a database of these people who committed these crimes can be collected, and should the federal government become uncaptured and restored to order, those criminal actions can be addressed. Now, I would also say governors, they have incredible emergency powers they can use that give them broad unilateral authority to address emerging issues that are rapidly developing, and not acting quickly will cause more harm compared to using traditional methods for legislative action. And this is one of those examples. One of the core things, one of the core values, one of the core tenets of this country is to have free and fair elections, and that they're run by the states. I would call that an emergency, and I think any governor that wouldn't say not having illegal and protected and covered up mafia-style control taken over our elections, that constitutes an emergency. And any governor who wouldn't agree with that, I would be very concerned, and I think they should all be on the record. And in fact, anyone listening to this or watching it, I would love for you to Google, whatever your governor's name is, and the contact information for their press office, because they really reliably respond to outreach with press questions. And you say, hey, I'm such and such, and you give them your name, and you say, you can say you're with the Existentialist Republic, because you're welcome to join in. I want to know if you would call, armed federal agents breaking federal law, showing up at our polling places, an emergency. And is that something worth protecting using emergency powers?
That's a brilliant suggestion. In fact, it leads to the piece that you wrote a little bit ago. America's governors have a choice: build something better or watch it all burn. You want to expand on that?
Absolutely. So that piece covers financial independence, sometimes referred to as soft secession. This is tier 2 for a working paper on a taxonomy for state responsiveness to federal autocratic capture in constitutional republics. And so I'll be submitting that to the Yale Law Review in the next few months. But right now I have a working paper out. This is tier 2. It's the financial independence tier. This is the tier where states can build infrastructure that creates resiliency against federal mismanagement and corruption. So at that level, you're not actively arresting federal agents for committing crimes, or even federal political officials for committing crimes, which you can do at tier 3 using state criminal statutes, which is defended under the dual sovereignty doctrine and is not impeded by the supremacy clause. But at tier 2, you say, okay, we're going to do like California's doing right now. They're working on public banking. That's the government owning a bank, just like they do in North Dakota. They've had a government-run bank that generates revenue. Last year, it generated $1/3 billion in revenue for the state of North Dakota. That is soft secession. That's financial independence, and it's a way to protect yourself so that as Trump and the GOP work to burn it all down, your state can have a replacement for SNAP. Your state can have a replacement for Medicaid and Social Security. That's better even, as they work to destroy them. And you can use non-tax revenue streams through public, like a revenue-generating public option, revenue-generating public housing that work at multiple income levels. And that's how you don't just pay for the good programs. You solve a problem by solving another problem. You help your budget become more robust while also making sure that you don't have homeless people.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff. Why is it that, in your opinion, that we haven't seen more aggressive prosecution of federal crime? I mean, you wrote a piece about, in fact, I think it was titled, Jonathan Ross shot Renee Good in January. The prosecutor has the evidence. He hasn't been charged. Why Why are these people afraid of the federal government? Are they concerned that Trump will cut even more of the funding to their states? What's your sense of what's going on here? By the way, we have about 2 minutes before we hit a hard break here, Chris.
Well, this is how you create controlled opposition, and controlled opposition that's unwitting. They don't realize they're controlled opposition. So a really good example is first I'll say a good example of unwitting controlled opposition being created in these situations is they say, okay, well, if we just take a really long time on this case, they're not going to cut funding, and then we're not going to have people in our state without SNAP or without, Medicaid. So we're protecting our constituents by giving them what they want and not prosecuting their agents and letting them give away what they want. It's a classic mob technique, and it's effective. The side of that is illustrated by what happened in Georgia, because the state of Georgia had a RICO case, a racketeering case against Trump with 19 other co-defendants, including Rudy Giuliani. That case got killed. Said, okay, the special prosecutor is recusing themselves, and we can continue with the case. Well, then they pushed it further, and they brought it to a higher court. And the state of Georgia had Republican-appointed judges say something that there was no precedent for. After she had told the special prosecutor to leave, they said she still needed to recuse herself from the case, and they handed it to someone who had already buried multiple cases for Trump.
Yeah, that
is why people are scared.
Yeah, this is part of the problem, is people who are willing to subordinate their sworn duty to this country, their loyalty to this country, their what remnant they may have of patriotism to this cult. Christopher Armitage, it's the Existentialist Republic over on Substack. It's free. You need to sign up for this newsletter. It's brilliant. Christopher, it's always great having you with us. Thank you so much for dropping by today.
Take care, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Keep up the great work.